My fiancé was wrapped around his ex-girlfriend, Sophia. His hand was lost in her waterfall of dark hair. Her fingers were tracing the sharp line of his jaw. For one sickening, suspended moment, they were a perfect portrait, a world of two. Then, his eyes, wide with shock, met mine over her shoulder. The illusion shattered, and so did my heart, the sound of it fracturing as loud in my ears as crystal thrown against stone. He practically threw her off him, scrambling to his feet as blood roared in my ears, a deafening white noise. "Elena, you're home early," he stammered, his voice cracking as he took a clumsy step towards me. "Sweetheart, listen to me. This is not what it looks like." My gaze dropped to the garish, crimson smear of lipstick on his collar, the exact shade Sophia always wore. "Not what it looks like?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. My hand, feeling suddenly heavy, rose, and I began to twist my grandmother's engagement ring on my finger. The sharp edges of the diamond dug into my skin, a small, grounding pain. "It looks exactly like what it is, Marcus. Don't insult my intelligence." Sophia finally stirred, pulling her ridiculously expensive-looking dress down over her knees. "He was just comforting me, Elena," she said, her voice dripping with mock sincerity. I was feeling overwhelmed. "Overwhelmed?" I echoed, the word tasting like poison. "Is that what you call it now?" My eyes flicked to the polished mahogany coffee table. A neat, pristine stack of our wedding invitations sat there, their gold-embossed script mocking me. "Because in 18 hours, 200 of our friends and family are expecting to watch me walk down the aisle to marry this man. That's a funny definition of comforting an old friend, wouldn't you say?" Marcus's face went pale. "Don't be so dramatic, Elena. It was a moment of weakness, that's all. It meant nothing, I swear." Sophia let out a little scoff. "Tell her the truth, Marcus. Tell her how you feel when you're not with her." He shot her a panicked look. "Sophia, shut up." "Don't tell her to shut up," I snapped, my voice rising. "I want to hear this. Does she know what this wedding is supposed to mean? Does she know who paid for that ring on my finger, or the watch on your wrist, or the very roof over our heads?" He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. "That's not fair. The business is finally taking off. I'm contributing now." "The business?" I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You mean my business? The one I funded with every last cent of my inheritance from my grandmother?" The ring felt like a lead weight, a shackle binding me to this colossal mistake. "While I was crunching numbers and balancing budgets to keep us afloat, you were taking her to dinners you told me were with investors. You were buying her designer bags. I saw them on her Instagram, Marcus. Did you really think I was that stupid?" Sophia smirked from the couch, finally standing up. "He buys me things because he loves me," she purred, stepping closer to him. "Unlike you, I don't have to buy his affection." That was it. The final killing blow. A loud, booming clap of thunder rattled the apartment's large windows, and the sky outside finally broke, unleashing a torrent of rain that streaked down the glass. The storm was inside me now, a cold, calculated rage that extinguished every last ember of love I had for him. He had made his choice, not in a single moment of weakness, but over and over again. "Get out," I said, my voice cutting through his stammered excuses. "Both of you, now." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, his face a mask of pathetic desperation. "Elena, please. We can talk about this. Don't do this." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, my voice as cold and hard as the diamond on my finger. "You've said everything. Get out. This is over. And trust me, Marcus, this betrayal will be the very last one you ever get away with." They stood frozen for a moment, caught in the silent space after my command. Marcus's face was a mess of disbelief and pleading, while Sophia's smugness had finally curdled into something that looked more like annoyance. He took a half step forward, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Elena, honey, just let's sit down. We can work through this. Don't throw away everything we've built." "We haven't built anything," I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. "I built a life you were a guest in, and visiting hours are over." Turning my back on them both, an act that felt more powerful than any amount of screaming, I walked to the kitchen island and retrieved my phone. My fingers didn't tremble as I swiped through my contacts and found the number for Clarice. Wedding planner. I pressed the call button and put the phone to my ear, my gaze fixed on the rain-lashed window, refusing to give them the satisfaction of looking at them. The phone rang once, twice. Elena, darling, I was just about to call you about the final seating chart adjustments. Clarice's cheerful voice chirped. Are you feeling excited? The big day is almost here. My own voice was steady, almost detached, as if I were discussing a business transaction. Hello, Clarice. I'm calling to tell you that the wedding is off. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Off? What do you mean, off? Is this a joke? We're 18 hours out, Elena. The flowers have been delivered to the venue. The caterers are prepping. I understand the timing is inconvenient, I said coolly, but it's canceled. Everything. The venue, the flowers, the catering, all of it. Send me the final invoices for any cancellation fees. I will settle them personally. But, Elena, all the deposits are non-refundable. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, she cried, her professionalism cracking under the strain. It's only money, Clarice, I replied, a bitter irony in my words. I'm sure Marcus will agree that some things are more important. Elena, wait! Marcus lunged across the room, his hand reaching for my phone. I sidestepped him, holding the device away from his grasp. His fingers brushed my arm, and I flinched as if burned. Hang up that phone! You don't understand what you're doing! He yelled, his face contorted with desperation. Sophia watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, a silent, assessing observer to the final implosion of my life. I ended the call with Clarice and met his wild eyes. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that I have been funding your entire life, including your affair with her. I gestured with my chin towards Sophia. I understand that you were planning to stand at an altar tomorrow and lie to me, to my family, and to God. What part of that am I failing to comprehend, Marcus? It wasn't like that, he insisted, his voice dropping to a desperate rasp. I love you. What happened with Sophia? It was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. Was it a mistake last week? I asked, my voice cutting. Or the week before? How many mistakes have there been, Marcus? How many late-night investor meetings were really just you crawling back to her? You chose her again, Marcus, I said, the words falling like stones in the quiet room. You've been choosing her for months. The only difference is that now I'm finally choosing myself. As if on cue, Sophia decided it was time for her dramatic exit. She snatched her designer handbag from the entryway console with a huff of indignation. I don't have to listen to this. Marcus, are you coming? But in her haste, her grip was clumsy. The purse slipped from her fingers, tumbling to the marble floor with a loud clatter. Its contents spilled across the pristine white tile. A lipstick, a wallet, a set of keys, and a small white plastic stick. It landed face up, its little digital window stark against the floor. A pregnancy test. And on it, 2 clear, damning pink lines. The silence that fell was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air from the room. It was a nuclear bomb detonated in our living room, and the fallout was just beginning to settle. I stared at the test, then at Sophia, whose face had gone chalk white. Then I looked at Marcus. He looked like he'd been turned to stone, his eyes wide with a horror that, for the first time, seemed to match my own. My mind, cold and analytical now, began to do the math. The box would have a date, but even without it, I knew. I thought back over the last few months. 3 months, I whispered, the realization dawning with sickening clarity. You weren't working late to close the Series A funding 3 months ago. You said you were sleeping at the office to get it done. My gaze locked onto his. That was a lie, wasn't it? He couldn't speak. He just stared, trapped between the woman he'd betrayed and the evidence of a future he had created with another. Just as I thought the room could not get any more fraught with tension, my phone buzzed in my hand. The sound was unnervingly loud in the dead silence. I glanced down, expecting a frantic text from Clarice, but it wasn't. It was a notification from my bank. Alert, a withdrawal of $50,000 has been processed from your joint checking account. My blood ran cold. I had set alerts for any transaction over $10,000. a precaution I'd taken when I first funded the startup. I tapped the notification, and the transaction details filled the screen. It was a wire transfer initiated 2 hours ago. The recipient was a holding company I didn't recognize. My money, $50,000 of my inheritance, gone just like that. While I was at my final dress fitting, dreaming of our future, he was in our home with her, actively robbing me to fund their love nest. The pieces clicked together with brutal finality. The affair, the lies, the pregnancy, the theft. It was all one big, systematic betrayal. I looked up from the screen, a chilling smile touching my lips. Wow, I said softly. You really are thorough, aren't you? I turned the phone screen around for him to see. $50,000, Marcus? What was this for? A down payment on a new life? A little nest egg for the baby? He flinched, finally breaking his paralysis. Elena, I can explain that. It's a business expense. Stop, I commanded, my voice resonating with an authority that made him freeze. Just stop talking. There are no more explanations I need from you. I looked from his pathetic face to Sophia's terrified one. Take your things and go, and I hope you enjoy that $50,000. It's the last cent you will ever get from me. The morning of what was supposed to be my wedding day dawned gray and rain-soaked. There was no joy, no nervous excitement, only the hollow ache of betrayal and a cold, crystalline resolve. Instead of a bridal suite, I found myself in the sterile, air-conditioned lobby of the downtown high-rise that housed M-Tech Solutions. My M-Tech Solutions. I had chosen the name, signed the lease, and funded the entire operation. The sleek glass walls and brushed chrome reception desk felt like a personal insult, monuments to my own foolishness. I didn't go up to the main floor, not yet. My keycard, the one that designated me as a primary shareholder, granted me access to the building's central security office in the basement. The guard on duty, a stout man I'd exchanged pleasantries with a dozen times, just nodded as I walked in. He thought I was here for a routine check. I stood in the hushed, dimly lit room, the only sound the low hum of the servers. My eyes were fixed on a bank of monitors, specifically the one labeled CEO office. And there he was, Marcus. He was pacing his glass-walled office like a caged animal, his hair a mess, his suit jacket slung carelessly over his chair. He had his phone clamped to his ear, his free hand gesturing wildly. I watched him, not with heartbreak, but with a chilling sense of detachment. He was a specimen under glass. I could see the panic radiating from him even on the silent, grainy screen. He'd be calling the investors, the ones whose money I knew he was about to lose. He'd be trying to spin some story about the canceled wedding, trying to reassure them that everything was fine, that their capital was secure. But it wasn't. And he knew I was the reason why. After watching him end one frantic call and immediately dial another, I had seen enough. The rat was in his trap. Now it was time to see how badly the ship was sinking. I made my way back up to the main lobby, the polished marble floors echoing my determined steps. I was heading for the elevators when a voice cut through the quiet murmur of the lobby. Elena? I turned. It was David, Marcus's co-founder and the lead software architect. He was pale, his eyes wide and bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept in days. He hurried towards me, bypassing the receptionist who gave him a confused look. Elena, thank God you're here, he breathed, his voice low and urgent. He grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the elevator bank and into a small alcove near the windows that overlooked the rain-slicked street. I've been calling you all morning. I heard about the wedding. I'm so sorry. I truly am. It's fine, David, I said, my tone leaving no room for pity. I'm not here for condolences. I'm here to assess my investment. His face crumpled with relief and terror all at once. That's why I need to talk to you. God, Elena, this is so much worse than you think. It's not just about Sophia. It's the company. It's everything. I know he's been funneling company money to her, I said. I saw a $50,000 transfer yesterday. David shook his head frantically, his eyes darting around the lobby as if the FBI were about to rappel down from the ceiling. No, you don't understand. It's not just the company's money he's been using. It's not just your money. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Elena, Marcus has been embezzling from client accounts to pay Sophia's credit cards. The word hung in the air between us. Embezzling. It was a hard, ugly word. It transformed the situation from a messy breakup and personal theft into a federal crime. What are you talking about? I demanded. Client accounts are segregated. I made sure of that in the charter. He found a way around it, David said, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. He set up a shell corporation, a fake vendor for data processing services. He was submitting inflated invoices and paying them out from the client reserve funds before they were transferred to operations. The money went from the clients, through our books, and straight to the shell corp, which was just a bank account he and Sophia had access to. My mind reeled, connecting the dots with horrifying speed. The late nights, the secrecy, the sudden, inexplicable cash flow issues he'd blamed on market volatility. I hired a forensic accountant 2 weeks ago, David continued, his voice cracking. I knew something was wrong. The numbers weren't adding up, and Marcus was getting so defensive, locking me out of the financials. The accountant found everything, Elena. He looked physically ill. Falsified reports, phantom expenses, ghost employees on the payroll. It's all there. A systematic, deliberate fraud. If our investors find out about this before we can fix it, we're all going to prison. He used my digital signature on some of the transfers. He's implicated me in this. A cold fury settled deep in my bones, pushing out any remaining shock. I looked at David's desperate face, at the genuine fear in his eyes, and my own resolve hardened. I was not going to be a victim in this story. I was not going to prison for a man who had shattered my life. My voice, when I finally spoke, cut through the air-conditioned silence like a blade. How long? David blinked, taken aback by my icy calm. How long has it been going on? Yes, I said. How long has he been stealing from the clients? He swallowed hard, the answer seeming to cause him physical pain. The accountant traced the first fraudulent transfer back 6 months. Maybe a little more. It started small, a few thousand here and there, but in the last 3 months, it escalated. He's taken over $500,000, Elena. 6 months? The same amount of time the affair had been rekindled. 3 months. The age of their unborn child. It was all connected. The lies, the cheating, the theft. It was one seamless, horrifying tapestry of deceit. He hadn't just been cheating on me, he had been building a separate life, brick by stolen brick, on a foundation of my money and criminal fraud. The elevator chimed softly, its doors sliding open with a gentle hiss, offering an escape from the suffocating tension of the lobby. I looked from David's pleading, terrified face and stepped inside the empty car without another word. As the polished steel doors began to close, I saw my own reflection in his desperate eyes, cold, calculating, and already planning my next move. The elevator doors closed, encasing me in a cocoon of brushed steel and silence. I didn't go down. I pressed the button for the parking garage, my mind already working, processing the new, horrific landscape of my life. David's terrified face was seared into my memory, but pity was a luxury I could no longer afford. He was collateral damage in a war Marcus had declared on me. As I slid into the driver's seat of my car, the quiet hum of the engine was a stark contrast to the maelstrom in my head. Before I even pulled out of the parking space, I made a call, not to my mother, not to my maid of honor, but to a man whose number I kept for dire business emergencies. Mr. Graves, I said when he answered, his voice a low gravel. Elena Chen. I have an urgent matter. Miss Chen, he replied, his tone all business. How can I help? I need surveillance and a full background workup on 2 individuals starting immediately. I need to know everything, assets, associates, and residential information. I suspect a secret cohabitation. I gave him Marcus's and Sophia's names, spelling them out clearly. He's my fiancé. She's his mistress. The priority is finding where they have been living together. I want photos. I want documents, leases, utility bills, anything that ties them to a shared address. I need it yesterday, Mr. Graves. Discretion is, as always, assured, he said, the unspoken question about his fee hanging in the air. Your usual rate, plus a 50% bonus for speed, I said. I want the first report on my desk by tonight. There was a short pause. Consider it done, Miss Chen, he said, and the line went dead. I drove out of the garage and into the gray, weeping city, not a woman scorned, but a CEO taking inventory of a catastrophic business failure. 7 hours later, a thick manila envelope landed on my kitchen table with a soft thud. Mr. Graves had been ruthlessly efficient. I poured myself a glass of scotch, the amber liquid a small, steadying comfort, and sat down to examine the wreckage of my relationship in high-resolution detail. The photographs were first, dozens of them. Marcus and Sophia kissing on a park bench. Marcus's hand on the small of her back as they entered a high-end grocery store. Sophia using a key to enter a sleek, modern condo building in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Them laughing on the balcony of that same condo, glasses of wine in their hands. Each photo was a perfectly composed piece of evidence, and each one felt like a fresh cut. I forced myself to look at them with clinical detachment, pushing the pain down, transmuting it into fuel. Then I got to the documents. Tucked behind the photos was a copy of a 1-year lease agreement for a 2-bedroom apartment in that very building. My eyes scanned the tenant information. Marcus Thorne. And beside it, Elena Chen. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at my name, then at the signature line at the bottom of the document. It was a flawless imitation of my handwriting, a perfect, elegant forgery. He had signed my name, binding me legally and financially to the love nest he shared with his pregnant mistress. The sheer audacity of it, the calculated violation, sent a tremor of pure, unadulterated rage through me. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just embezzlement. This was identity theft. He hadn't just tried to ruin my life, he had tried to become me, using my name, my money, and my reputation as a shield for his squalid secrets. Just then, my phone rang, flashing David's name on the screen. I answered, my voice colder than I intended. "What is it, David?" "Elena, oh, thank God. I was worried you weren't going to pick up," he babbled, his voice tight with panic. "I just got off a call with the lead auditor. They're not waiting for the quarterly review. They're coming in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, a full top-to-bottom audit. They said something about an anonymous tip triggering a red flag in their system." "Let them come," I said calmly, swirling the scotch in my glass. "Let them come? Are you insane?" "We're finished. They'll find the shell corp in the first hour. Marcus has locked down everything. I'm trying to get into the primary accounting server, but he's changed all the user-level passwords. We're locked out, Elena. He's going to pin it all on us." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It felt alien. "He changed the user-level passwords, David. The ones for day-to-day operations. He's forgotten who built the system architecture." There was a confused silence on his end. "What are you talking about?" "When I funded the company, I insisted on a failsafe," I explained, my eyes scanning the forged lease again. "A back-end system administrator account with root access to every server, every file, every kilobyte of data in this company. It bypasses all user permissions. I made him create it, and he called me paranoid. He never uses it because he thinks it's redundant." David's breathing hitched. You have access to that?" "I have the username, the password, and the triple encrypted security key that's required to log in. And it's all on a thumb drive in my safe." I paused, letting the weight of it sink in. He was so busy forging my signature on an apartment lease, he forgot he gave me the keys to his entire kingdom. "My God, Elena," he whispered, "what are you going to do?" "I'm going to download every fraudulent transaction, every falsified report, every stolen dollar, every single lie," I said, my gaze falling on my wedding dress, which was still hanging on the back of my bedroom door like a pale ghost. The ceremony would have been starting in 12 hours. The life I was supposed to have was gone. But a new one was just beginning. I'm going to get everything before that audit tomorrow morning, and then I'm going to burn him to the ground. The next few hours were a blur of focused intensity. I retrieved the encrypted drive, a sleek black stick no bigger than my thumb, and plugged it into my laptop. The login prompt appeared on my screen. I typed in the arcane sequence of letters and numbers, a password I had memorized years ago as a contingency. System administrator access granted. A jolt of pure power surged through me. I was in. The company's digital heart was laid bare before me. I navigated past the user-level directories, the ones Marcus and David saw every day, and descended into the server's core infrastructure. It was like walking through the back alleys of a city you thought you knew, seeing all the rot hidden behind the pristine facades. I started a global search for the name of the shell corporation David had mentioned. He hadn't known the name, but I had a hunch. I typed Aphrodite Consulting into the search bar. Bingo. A folder appeared containing hundreds of files. It was a sick, twisted joke, naming his criminal enterprise after the goddess of love. I opened the folder and my blood ran cold. Invoice after invoice, all for data processing services, strategic consulting, synergy analysis, all meaningless corporate jargon. But the dates and amounts told the real story. I pulled up Sophia's Instagram profile on my tablet, creating a split screen. The evidence was damning. Here was a wire transfer to Aphrodite for $15,000 on April 12th for emergency server maintenance. And here was Sophia posting a picture on April 13th from a 5-star resort in Bali, tagging Marcus, thanking him for the spontaneous birthday surprise. Here was another invoice for $8,000 for software licensing renewal in May. The next day, Sophia posted a photo of a new Cartier bracelet wrapped around her wrist. On and on it went, a digital breadcrumb trail leading from my inheritance, through the client accounts, and directly to the lavish lifestyle they were flaunting in public. I downloaded it all, the invoices, the wire transfer confirmations, the falsified expense reports where Marcus had claimed $500 dinners for two with investors on the same nights he was with Sophia. I found the documents where he had forged David's signature, approving payments to his own ghost company. I found emails between him and Sophia where they discussed their budget and how they needed to secure another client payment soon to afford the deposit on their condo. Each file was a new layer of his depravity, a fresh wave of nausea and fury washing over me. This wasn't just a man having an affair, this was a predator, systematically draining every resource he could get his hands on with no regard for who he destroyed. As the progress bar on the final download crept towards 100%, I felt a profound shift within myself. The grief was gone, burned away by the white-hot rage and the icy cold of my purpose. He thought he had taken everything from me. He was wrong. He had taken a weak, trusting woman and forged her into something new, something sharp and unbreakable. The download completed. I ejected the drive safely. It was all there. Every lie, every crime, every piece of evidence I needed to utterly destroy him. The morning audit wasn't a threat anymore. It was the starting pistol for my revenge. The auditors were scheduled for 9 a.m., but I knew Marcus would be in earlier, trying to rally his key investors for a last-ditch emergency funding round before the official review began. David had confirmed it in a panicked text an hour earlier. They're in the main boardroom. He's telling them it's a hostile takeover attempt. He's asking for bridge funding to fight it. They're considering it. So, I arrived at 8:30. I strode through the lobby, my destination the glass-walled boardroom at the end of the hall. David stood outside the doors, looking like a man waiting for his own execution. He saw me and his eyes widened. "Elena, what are you going to do?" he whispered, gesturing to the closed doors. "He's in there, spinning the performance of a lifetime." "A performance deserves a critic," I said, pulling the small black flash drive from my purse. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger. "And I've brought my notes." Ignoring his panicked expression, I walked the final few feet to the boardroom. My heels clicked against the polished marble floor, each sharp sound a tick of a clock counting down the final seconds of Marcus's career. I didn't knock. I pushed the heavy glass door open and stepped inside. The room fell silent. Marcus was at the head of the long mahogany table, mid-sentence, a confident smile plastered on his face. The smile froze, then melted away into a mask of pure horror as he saw me. Seated around the table were 5 men in expensive suits, the company's primary investors. Their faces turned from Marcus to me, a mixture of surprise and annoyance at the interruption. I recognized the man at the opposite end of the table as Meister Sterling, the lead investor, a shrewd and formidable man in his late 60s. I strode directly to him, my gaze never leaving his. "Mr. Sterling, gentlemen," I began, my voice calm and clear, filling the sudden vacuum. "My apologies for the interruption. I am Elena Chen. For those of you who don't know me, I am the primary funding partner for this venture, and until yesterday, the fiancé of the man at the head of this table." I placed the flash drive on the polished surface in front of Mr. Sterling. It slid a few inches, coming to a stop next to his leather-bound portfolio. "I couldn't help but overhear that you are considering a new round of funding. Before you sign anything else with my fiancé, you should know that for the last 6 months, he's been using your money and mine to fund his pregnant mistress's lifestyle." A wave of murmurs went around the table. Marcus's face had drained of all color, leaving it a pasty, sickly gray. He looked like he was going to be physically ill. He shot up from his chair, his hands gripping the table's edge to steady himself. "Elena, please," he choked out, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't the time or the place. This is a private matter." "Is it?" I shot back, my voice ringing with contempt. I turned to the investors. "Is it a private matter when your capital is being embezzled through a shell corporation to pay for black label credit cards and a secret condo?" "Please what, Marcus?" I rounded on him, my voice dripping with ice. "Please keep enabling your theft while you plotted to abandon me at the altar? Please allow you to continue forging signatures on legal documents, implicating your business partner in your crimes?" His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked utterly broken, exposed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the boardroom he once commanded. He was a king, stripped bare in his own court, and I was the one who had torn away his robes. Suddenly, the boardroom doors burst open again, this time with a dramatic flair that could only belong to one person. Sophia stood there, panting slightly, her face flushed with anger. Her designer dress was stretched tight over the distinct curve of her stomach. She must have been waiting in the lobby, a desperate backup plan for Marcus. "She's lying!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. Her eyes were wild, darting between me and the stunned faces of the investors. "All of it is lies. Marcus loves me. He was going to leave her for me. He told me so." She stormed further into the room, stopping beside Marcus's chair. "He loves me, not some dried-up workaholic who thinks she can buy a husband. You're just jealous because he chose me." Her words, meant to be daggers, fell completely flat. The investors stared at her, their expressions shifting from surprise to disgust. Her crude, hysterical outburst was a stark contrast to my cold, factual presentation. She wasn't helping him. She was burying him. Her presence confirming the pregnant mistress's part of my accusation in the most spectacular way possible. I didn't even grace her with a response. I simply held my gaze on Mr. Sterling, who had picked up the flash drive and was examining it with a thoughtful, unreadable expression. "Miss Chen," he said finally, his calm voice cutting through the chaos like a razor. "Do you have a laptop?" "Of course," I said. I retrieved it from my bag, set it on the table, and plugged in the drive. In seconds, the screen was filled with the neatly organized folders of evidence. Aphrodite consulting invoices, forged signatures, wire transfers. I turned the laptop so he could see. He spent a few moments clicking through the files, his brow furrowed in concentration. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by Sophia's ragged breathing. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Sterling looked up, his face grim. He looked past me, his eyes locking on Marcus, who seemed to shrink in his chair. "Mr. Thorne," Sterling said, his voice low and laced with steel, "I've seen enough." He turned to the man on his right. "Call legal." Then he looked back at me. "Miss Chen, these documents appear to show systematic, premeditated embezzlement on a scale that constitutes major wire fraud. We appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We're calling the authorities immediately." The chaos erupted. Two of the other investors were instantly on their phones, their voices low and angry. Another was speaking urgently to Sterling. Sophia let out a horrified sob, grabbing onto Marcus's arm. "Do something!" she screeched at him. "Marcus, say something!" But he was catatonic, staring into the abyss that had just opened up beneath his feet. In the midst of the pandemonium, a soft buzz emanated from my purse. I reached inside and pulled out my phone. It was a text message, an automated reminder from a life that no longer existed. It was from the wedding venue. Ceremony starts in 4 hours. Final confirmation needed for bridal party arrival. I read the words, a ghost of a smile touching my lips. It was a message from a parallel universe where I was still a fool. I held my finger over the screen, watching the men who held Marcus's fate in their hands decide his future. Then, with a quiet sense of finality, I deleted the message and slipped the phone back into my purse. The scent of lilies and incense filled the air, a holy perfume for a day of reckoning. Light streamed through the stained glass windows of the cathedral, painting the pews in jewel-toned colors. 200 guests, a curated collection of our friends, family, and business associates, sat in hushed confusion. The organist played a soft, somber prelude, a melody more suited to a funeral than a wedding. They were all here for a wedding, but there was no groom waiting at the altar. There was only me. I stood alone on the raised dais, a solitary figure in my grandmother's wedding dress. The antique ivory lace felt less like a gown and more like armor, the long train a royal mantle. I had put it on not with a bride's joyful anticipation, but with the grim determination of a queen about to sentence a traitor. My parents sat in the front row, their faces etched with a combination of worry and pride. They knew. I had called them after leaving the office, giving them the brutal, abbreviated version of the truth. Across the aisle, Marcus's parents looked simply bewildered, their expressions shifting between anxiety and embarrassment. They had been trying to reach their son for hours. I watched the sea of faces turn to whisper to one another, their polite confusion growing with every passing minute. They had received my text that morning. The ceremony will proceed as planned. Your presence is more important than ever. Elena. They had come expecting a celebration of love. They were about to witness its public autopsy. Where the officiant should have been, a single microphone on a slender stand awaited me. I took a deep breath, the corseted bodice of the dress a restrictive but steadying pressure, and wrapped my fingers around it. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice amplified by the microphone, ringing with a clarity that seemed to shatter the sacred silence. Every head snapped in my direction, eyes wide. "Thank you all for coming. I know you are confused, and I promise you, I will provide an explanation." I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. We are taught that a wedding is a celebration of a union, the joyous culmination of a love story. We gather to witness two people commit their lives to one another, based on pillars of love, trust, and honesty. I let my eyes sweep across the crowd, meeting the gazes of friends who had celebrated with me, family who had loved me. Today was supposed to be about that love and commitment, but instead it's about truth. It's about the truth that sometimes the most important commitment you can make is the one you make to yourself, even if it means standing alone at the altar. As if summoned by my words, the great oak doors at the back of the sanctuary burst open with a resounding crash that echoed through the nave. Every guest gasped and turned. It wasn't a tardy groomsman or a flower girl making a clumsy entrance. It was Marcus. He was flanked by two grim-faced men in dark suits, their jackets unable to conceal the badges clipped to their belts. His wrists were bound behind his back with a pair of cold steel handcuffs. It was the FBI. They escorted him down the aisle, a grotesque parody of the traditional bridal procession. He stumbled along the velvet runner, his eyes wild and fixated on me. "Elena!" he cried out, his voice raw with panic. The agents at his side didn't flinch, their steps measured and firm as they propelled him forward. "Elena, tell them it's all a mistake. I can explain everything. This is all a misunderstanding." They brought him to the foot of the altar, a prisoner brought before his judge. He looked pathetic, his expensive suit rumpled, his face pale and sweating. All the swagger and charm had been stripped away, leaving only the weak, desperate man I now saw so clearly. I looked down at him from my vantage point, the microphone still in my hand. "A misunderstanding?" I asked, my voice resonating through the church, each word a carefully aimed dart. "Were your hands on her a misunderstanding, Marcus? Was her pregnancy test a misunderstanding? Was my forged signature on your secret apartment lease a misunderstanding?" The guests let out a collective gasp. Marcus flinched as if I had physically struck him. "No, please, listen to me." he begged, his voice cracking. We can fix this. I love you, Elena. I've always loved you. What I did, it was wrong. I know that. But I can make it right. I gave a short, sharp laugh, devoid of all humor. Love. You don't know the first thing about love, Marcus. You only know how to consume, how to take, how to use people until they have nothing left to give. I leaned into the microphone, my voice dropping but losing none of its intensity, ensuring every single person in that church could hear my verdict. The only misunderstanding here, I said, my voice rising again to fill every corner of the vast space, was my own. It was thinking you were capable of loving anyone but yourself. He does love someone. He loves me. A shrill voice pierced the stunned silence. Sophia came barreling down the aisle, pushing past a shocked usher. She was a hurricane of fury and desperation, her face blotchy with tears, her hair a mess. She rushed to Marcus's side, trying to touch his face, her hands blocked by one of the impassive agents. He chose me, she screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria as she pointed at me. He was going to leave you anyway. He told me. We were going to be a family. You can't do this. I looked at her, this woman who had conspired to ruin me, and I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, only a profound, weary pity. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star, and now she was panicking as it plummeted to earth. Then you have him, I said calmly, my voice cutting through her tirade. And you are welcome to him. I gave her a small, tight smile. Enjoy being broke together. As of 9 a.m. this morning, a federal judge froze all of his assets and, by extension, all of yours, pending the outcome of the fraud investigation. The self-righteous fury in Sophia's eyes instantly vanished, replaced by a raw, naked terror. Her mouth fell open. The love she had so loudly proclaimed evaporated in the face of financial ruin. Her gaze darted from me to Marcus, her expression one of dawning horror. She had not won a great love. She had been named co-conspirator in a federal crime. I turned my back on them both then. Their frantic whispers and Sophia's renewed sobs were nothing but static to me now. My part in their drama was over. On the small, linen-covered table at the side of the altar lay the pristine, unsigned marriage certificate. I picked it up. It felt impossibly light. I held it up for the entire congregation to see, a worthless scroll promising a future that had been a lie from the start. This was a contract, I announced, my voice steady and strong. It was predicated on fraud. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, I tore it cleanly in half. The sound of ripping paper was shockingly loud in the silent church. It was the sound of a final, irrevocable break. I let the two pieces flutter from my fingers. They drifted to the cold stone floor of the altar like fallen leaves. My old life was dead. Without a backward glance at the ruins of the man I once thought I loved, I turned and walked back down the aisle, my head held high, each step taking me further away from the wreckage and closer to my new beginning. 5 years is a long time. It's long enough for wounds to scar over, for memories to soften, and for karma to finish her slow, meticulous work. I don't seek out news of Marcus or Sophia anymore, but sometimes it finds me anyway. My private investigator, Mr. Graves, sends me a brief, unsolicited update once a year, like a morbid Christmas card. From his reports, I've pieced together the trajectory of their great love story. After Marcus was convicted on multiple counts of wire fraud and embezzlement, my testimony and the evidence on that flash drive having been incontrovertible, he served 32 months in a low-security federal prison. Sophia, who narrowly avoided indictment by claiming she was just a naive, lovesick fool, waited for him. She had his baby while he was inside, a son. I imagine she pictured a triumphant reunion, the two of them against the world. But the grand romance they'd built on my stolen money and their shared deceit couldn't survive the harsh reality of poverty. Their love, it turned out, had a price tag. And without my funds, they couldn't afford it. The last I heard, they live in a cramped 2-room studio apartment above a 24-hour laundromat on the bad side of town. The sleek condo is a distant memory. The designer clothes have been replaced by discount retail. Mr. Graves's report mentioned that their neighbors complain about the constant shouting. Their love didn't survive poverty. It curdled into a bitter daily resentment. The warm afternoon sun streams into my office, glinting off the framed architectural prints on the wall. It's a space David and I designed together, light, airy, and built on a foundation of honesty. I look down at the document on my glass desk. It's crisp, heavy paper smelling faintly of ink and possibility. With a smooth, steady stroke of my pen, I sign my name. There, I say with a satisfied smile. The deed is signed. The waterfront property is officially ours. David looks up from his own laptop, his face breaking into the warm, familiar grin that I've come to cherish more than any asset. 5 years ago, he was a pale, terrified man trapped in a nightmare. Today, he is my husband, a confident and brilliant CEO, and the center of my world. Perfect timing, he says, turning his screen towards me. I just finished reviewing the quarterly numbers from our software division. You might want to sit down for this. I lean forward, my eyes scanning the spreadsheet. The profit margins are staggering, exceeding even our most optimistic projections. They exceed Marcus's wildest, most grandiose dreams. My God, David, I breathe. We've done it. We've really done it. We've done it, he corrects me gently, his hand coming to rest on my arm. Together, we built something real, Elena, something solid. No shortcuts, no lies. As if to punctuate his words, I feel a sharp, sudden kick against my ribs from within. I gasp, then laugh, placing a hand over the swell of my stomach. Well, I say, looking down at my bump and then back up at my husband, my heart overflowing with a quiet, profound joy I once thought was impossible. It looks like our newest board member approves of the quarterly earnings. David's eyes soften, his love for me a tangible presence in the room. He reaches across the desk and places his hand over mine on my stomach. She has excellent business sense, just like her mother. He leans in and kisses me, a soft, lingering kiss full of history and promise. A lot can change in 5 years, Helena Chin. Thank God for that, I whisper back, my voice thick with emotion. Our empire, built from the ashes of Marcus's betrayal, is more successful and more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined. I look at the man who stood by me, who helped me rebuild, who showed me what true partnership looked like. I feel the flutter of new life within me, a future untainted by the past. I have never, not for one single moment, looked back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a loud, fiery spectacle. It isn't about seeking retribution or gloating over an enemy's downfall. It's a quieter, more powerful thing. It's the calm, steady work of rebuilding your own life, of pouring your energy not into hatred, but into creating a future so bright it completely eclipses the shadows of the past. It's about building a life of integrity, finding a love based on respect, and achieving a level of success and happiness your betrayer could never even comprehend. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting go, trusting in yourself and watching karma work its slow, inevitable, and beautifully just magic.